We all grew up watching stories about world-changing apps born in a garage, but the statistical reality of wealth building points in the opposite direction. The most reliable paths to financial independence are built on unglamorous services like pest control and coin laundry. These operators succeed because they sit behind the boredom barrier. When a market requires dirty work or ugly logistics, ambitious people tend to ignore it, leaving a massive void of competition. Every entrepreneur has to choose their risk profile. You can take on innovation risk, where you attempt to manufacture new demand from scratch, or you can take on execution risk, where the demand already exists and your only job is delivering the service consistently. Navigating this landscape requires a strict audit of your own resources. You have to filter these boring businesses by your exact ratio of available time and capital. This line graph plots social prestige against the statistical probability of success. At the top left, a prestigious tech startup attracts extreme competition, driving success towards zero. At the bottom right, an unglamorous laundromat operates with high survival odds because few want to open one. Achieving reliable financial independence requires sacrificing the ego of being an innovator in exchange for the high-probability mathematics of basic execution. We can separate these operations into 3 tiers. The first is the sweat equity tier. These businesses require less than a few $1,000s to launch, but they demand massive physical discomfort. The core examples involve window washing, handling harsh chemicals for pressure washing, or crawling under houses for extermination. The profit margins here are abnormally high, regularly sitting between 35 and 50%. The operator charges a premium simply because no one else is willing to do the physical task. This quadrant chart maps initial capital required against physical effort needed. Sweat equity businesses sit directly in the bottom right corner. Because capital requirements are minimal, a $1,500 investment in a pressure washer can yield a cash return its very first week. But there is a heavy operational trap. In this tier, the owner is the primary laborer. The business scales entirely on your physical stamina. The friction hits the moment you try to grow. Scaling requires you to step back and manage blue-collar crews, transforming you from an independent worker into a full-time human resources manager. Sweat equity operations are a high-probability stepping stone for generating initial cash flow, but they are grueling active jobs that completely contradict the myth of passive income. To remove yourself entirely from the grueling daily physical labor, you have to transition your focus to heavy, specialized assets. This is the asset arbitrage tier. It requires moderate capital, roughly $1,500 to $10,000, to purchase units like ATMs, vending machines, or scaffolding. The core mechanic relies on absorbing the cost of an expensive asset once and renting it out dozens of times to people who only need it temporarily. This Venn diagram breaks down the 3 mandatory components required to make this model generate profit: capital, location, and a maintenance route. Profit only occurs right here in the center. Owning a machine is useless without the other factors. Looking at the location circle, the actual product you sell is negotiation. You are securing permission to occupy a high-traffic physical space. This exposes the autopilot myth. The reality requires a strict schedule of geographic maintenance routes to restock goods and collect physical cash. You enter a geographic trap. Operators are tethered to the physical driving radius of their route unless they sacrifice profit margins to hire a dedicated manager. Operators bypass this limitation by stacking assets. Placing an ATM directly next to an existing vending machine doubles the revenue yield of a single location visit. Asset arbitrage is essentially micro-real estate. Success depends on monopolizing neglected physical spaces and optimizing logistics, rather than the machines themselves. The highest tier of boring businesses bypasses the startup phase entirely. You purchase an operation that already functions. The barrier to entry here is high leverage. This path requires deploying significant capital, often taking on between $100,000 and $300,000 in debt. What you are paying to eliminate is product-market fit risk. That is the highly dangerous early phase of a new business, where the founder has no idea if anyone actually wants their service. This timeline chart compares the 2 financial trajectories. Line A shows a founder starting from scratch, facing flat or negative cash flow for months. Line B shows an acquisition, a deep initial dip for debt, followed by high positive cash flow from day one. The wide horizontal gap between these two lines illustrates the sheer amount of time saved by buying existing cash flow instead of building it. Franchises fit this exact model by providing a rigid, stress-tested instruction manual. This completely removes the operator's need to invent operational systems. 95% of laundromats survive past 5 years, specifically because the model lacks any required innovation. But the downside carries severe consequences. If the local market shifts or the previous owner lied about the financials, you still hold the massive debt obligation. The psychological toll is also real. The owner must operate strictly as a compliant manager of a system, surrendering all creative control. Capital acquisition buys sheer speed and statistical safety. You trade the romantic identity of a founder for the heavy reality of managing debt. When you look at the underlying architecture connecting these various business models, you find the exact same mechanism. Long-term wealth in these sectors is built by moving away from the one-time sale. These businesses are designed to optimize exclusively for recurring revenue. The math proves it. Securing one annual corporate cleaning contract is consistently superior to hunting for a new residential customer every single week. To navigate this, you have to filter these 3 tiers through your specific life constraints. This decision matrix lays out how to match your personal resources to the correct business type. If you are time-rich but capital-poor, target the sweat equity tier. You actively use your high tolerance for physical discomfort as your primary competitive moat. If you are capital-rich but time-poor, avoid operational heavy lifting entirely. Deploy leverage into Tier 3 acquisitions to secure immediate cash flow. Lasting financial independence rarely goes to the smartest person with the most innovative idea. It goes to the most consistent operator willing to execute in the markets everyone else ignored.